Hello, and welcome to this class on the philosophy of religion. I'm your professor. I'm Dr. Kirk Sandvig. And what I want this video to really do for us is to set out a good structure, a good base of understanding as we begin this course. So what I'll be going through mostly during this video is the syllabus. Now, I may or may not do future videos like this. I might do it if some of the assignments or any of the other lectures might need a little more explanation. But for the most part, this might be my last video, and all my other lectures will be found on Blackboard. And I have written out pretty much what I would normally say in my in-person class lectures there. So don't get confused when you see the lecture, when you click it open. It looks like a textbook because I've kind of spent some time formatting it. There's still a lot of typos in there. I'm still working on clarifying a lot of those things up, but for the most part, it's structured the way I want it to be. All right, let's begin this class. This class is going to be looking at the philosophy of religion. And so it's going to take some components of philosophy and then also some components of religion. What makes a religion? How do we understand God and other theistic understandings of God? It's really going to be highlighting a lot of those interesting issues that religion and philosophy tend to overlap. So in general, the theme of the class will talk about the existence and nature of God and gods, redemption and ritual, human free will and responsibility, the exploration of faith and reason, religious experience, the problem of evil, as well as different views of life after death, miracles and historical inquiry, and religion in the context of modernity. So this is kind of the main themes that we're going to be talking about. Now, I also need to point out that this class is not a self-paced course. I've had some students in the past that thought that they could just do the assignments whenever they felt like, and I hate to break it to you, but this is not one of those courses. We have structured weeks throughout the semester, so if that's going to be a problem, this might not be the class for you. So we'll have assignments due on Wednesdays, and then from Thursday to Saturday, and then also on Saturday. So those are going to be our main times for our deadlines for our weekly assignments. And we'll talk about all those assignments as we go through it. All right. So let's first talk about my office hours. Since this is an online class, I'll have office hours by appointment only. So if you would like to meet with me, please do so, but know that I'll have to arrange my schedule to come make a visit. And I'm more than happy to meet with any of you guys at any time. We just need to send me an email and we can kind of schedule that. Now, I already kind of went over the course description, what we're going to be covering. But now I want to talk about the course objectives. So there are 5 objectives that I want to focus on. One is to critically examine the religious concepts of a variety of cultures. So this isn't just going to be a Western philosophy class. I'm also going to bring in some Eastern philosophy, some Islamic philosophy as well into this class. So it's going to be a mixture of lots of different religions, not just Western understandings of philosophy. So let's keep that in mind. Also explain and analyze the arguments in support of the existence or non-existence of the theistic God or gods. I'm also going to have you guys construct arguments that demonstrate an engagement in original philosophical thinking on the topics of religion. So this isn't really much of a regurgitation class. It's more of where you just kind of spew back information back at me. This is where I really want you to tackle some of these issues and get some real philosophical thinking under your belt in this class. So in order to do that, you're going to need to learn to analyze and critically evaluate ideas, arguments, and points of view, as well as develop your skills in written communication. And you'll do this through various assignments throughout the class. All right, so now let's talk about some of our texts text for this class. The first one is the Low book. It's a very good outline of the information that we'll be covering throughout the semester. But it doesn't cover it all, so I'll have to kind of mix in some other readings as well. And this is where the Advaita Vedanta comes into play, as well as the classical readings in Chinese philosophies as well. So those three books were going to be the main focus of our readings. But I've also have some additional readings that I also have assigned, and I'll get into a little bit more about that when we get into our assignments. You don't have to do all of these additional readings. You have to do at least one, but I'll talk about that as we get into each one of these assignments. So first things first, let's talk about the assignments. Now, the first assignment that I want to go over is the article presentation. Now, the article presentation, this is where, like, what I've done is I've posted a bunch of articles on Blackboard corresponding to each week, and they correspond to the theme that we're going to be covering for each week. And what I'd like you guys to do is to pick one of these articles throughout the semester. So you don't have to read every single article. I know you guys have busy lives and you don't have time to do all these reading assignments on top of all the mandatory readings that I already have you doing. So these other readings, these articles, what these are geared for is so that you can spend a lot of time on one of those articles, only one of those articles, but you have to know that article really well. And this is where the assignment comes in, because what I'd like you guys to do is take that article, and these articles vary in length. Sometimes they're about 10 pages, sometimes they're about 30 or 40 pages. But what you're going to need to do is to consolidate what the article is talking about and highlight some of the most interesting or notable parts of the article. All right, so if you try to consolidate the entire article into the assigned length of this, which is about 500 words, and I understand it's hard to get a lot of information within 500 words, but this is where your ability to digest information really comes into play. So what I'd like you guys to do is to highlight 3 or 4 of the most interesting or notable parts of the article and showcase them to the class in an assignment written about 500 words. All right, so that's the first part of this assignment. The second part of this assignment is to provide discussion questions. And this is really the key portion of this assignment, because not only do you have to provide enough information for the rest of the class to know what the article is talking about, but then you also have to make these discussion questions that makes the article information relatable to the rest of the class. And so allowing for the rest of the class to have a very meaningful and interesting, engaging discussion. All right, now here's a couple of points that I want to bring up about some of these discussion questions. All right, let's try to avoid questions that are very vague or very kind of general. I don't like to see questions that say, can you compare this to another religion we've covered in this class? Those get boring. Those are boring questions. I want some questions that really get us thinking, really challenge our understandings of these concepts, and allow us to relate to them into our lives. Because some of these themes are kind of way out there, and it's important to kind of make things a little bit more relevant to our lives. So make things somewhat controversial. I wouldn't say like make it very controversial, but make something that's challenging and interesting for the rest of the class. And I want at least 3 questions. At least 3 questions. All right, you can do more than that, of course. And the way you structure your questions can be. It all depends on how you'd like to do it. Sometimes some students have a good job of having all the questions at the end, and sometimes they break it up throughout their presentation. So they'll talk about one key component, they'll ask a question, they'll talk about another key component, they'll ask a question, and then they'll ask another couple of questions. But nevertheless, that's kind of how some people have done it. All right, so that's that idea. Now, the way you signed up for these presentations is through a Google Doc that I've posted on Blackboard. You just click on it and you put your name next to the article that you want to present. So if you find an article that you find really interesting or a theme that you find really interesting, sign up for that one. It's a first come, first serve deal. So just put your name next to it and go for that article. Now, it's also important if you're going to do these articles, some of these articles are pretty dense, pretty complicated. So it helps to have some time to digest the information. Don't just read it the night before and type it up. A lot of people cannot do that. It's not that type of assignment. It's going to take some time. And if you have questions about the assignment or the article, let me know and I can help you out with it. But it's going to take a couple times of reading. And I also encourage you guys to read the assigned readings and and look at the lectures, and that might help influence your understanding of the articles as well. It might shed some light on them. So that's where you sign up for the articles. Now, if you realize at some point that you're having difficulty or you cannot do this week, something happens, and it always does. Something happens where you cannot get it done. Do your best to see if you can maybe switch with somebody else in the class, but I understand it's going to be difficult in an online setting. Contact me and maybe we can find another spot in the class where you can present. But what I want you to avoid is just at the last minute dropping out, so we don't have anyone presenting in that week. So take a little bit of foresight. Now, here's the catch on these. You need to post your article presentation on the Wednesday of the week that you are supposed to be presenting. So Wednesday by 11:59 p.m. All right. The reason why I have this is because I want people to spend the rest of the week discussing it. And this gets to our next assignment. So post it by 11:59 p.m. on Wednesday, and from Thursday and then until Saturday, we'll spend the rest of the time discussing it as a class. All right, as an interesting assignment. All right, let's move on to this discussion board. The discussion board is a chance for you to continue to engage with that article. Now, you don't have to necessarily read the article, but you really need to at least read the presentation given by the student who is leading that discussion. So read that, and then you have to provide some feedback, and you have to post your feedback in a number of ways. So for each discussion board, you have to give, and it seems really complicated on the syllabus. It's really not. I'm going to do my best to kind of simplify it in person here, or face to screen or whatever. So you have to do 6 posts total per week. And you have to respond to at least 2 different article presentations. All right. Or at the most 2 article presentations. All right. Or just do 2. So in that article presentation, there are a number of questions that are going to be asked by the discussion leader. You can respond to them, and you have to do 2 responses, or you can respond to a question from another student. Because here's what we have to do each week. You have to give 2 responses and 1 question per discussion. So if you're doing 2 different responses for 2 different articles, that means you have to do a total of 6 posts each week. And in each post, or each article, you have to give 2 responses and 1 question per discussion. But each of them has to be a separate post. So don't just do all of your responses, so all 3 of them on one. So you do 2 comments and a question on one. Don't do that. Make a separate post for the first response, a separate post for the second response, and another post for the question. Okay? And your responses, I've had this issue in the past where people are not giving adequate responses and their grades were suffering, but they weren't really changing anything. It was kind of annoying. So I'm making a minimum requirement for the length of your response. It should be at least 5 sentences. This gives you an opportunity to really engage in the question that's being asked. And then the questions that you should ask, again, don't provide just a blah questions. The questions should engage further discussion, encouraging further discussion in the class. Okay, so don't just, again, how does this compare to another thing? Like, make the discussion last even further. Okay, so again, there are 6 posts you must do each week. A total of 4 responses and 2 questions. Those are broken up into 2 different article presentations. So in one article presentation, you have to give 2 responses and 1 question. And in the other one, you have to do 2 responses and 1 question. Total of 6. Now, what if, for instance, something happens where only one person presents an article? In that case, you consolidate all of those into 6 posts each week, still doing the same thing, but you do it all on one article. So you do the 4 responses and 2 questions all in that one article presentation. All right, I know that was probably not as clear as I wanted to say it, but that's the general gist. Each week, 6 posts, and you have to have in each discussion, you have to do 2 responses, 1 question. Hopefully that's clear. I know it's hard, it's a complicated process, but it's the best way I could try to articulate this system. All right, now let's move on to the next assignment. These are our chapter quizzes. You'll have chapter quizzes pretty much each week throughout the semester. And these are also going to be due on every Wednesday at 11:59 p.m. The reason why I want these chapter quizzes due on Wednesday is because it gives everyone a chance to, once you finally get to the discussions, you'll actually have some information to actually base your discussion off of, as opposed to just kind of going off the seat of your pants and not knowing what you're talking about. So if you read the material, you'll have a baseline of information which you can then take the quiz, and then you can then use that information for the discussions you have later on that week. So you have these chapter quizzes will be based on the required readings, and they'll be mostly true, false, and multiple choice questions. I've been told that these quizzes are fairly challenging. But I always get people who get 100% on these, so it's not unreasonably challenging. I don't put time limits on these quizzes, so you have as long as you want to take these quizzes up until the deadline, of course. So I encourage you guys to, while you're reading, kind of know what questions I'm asking and look for those questions. And believe me, they're there. Whether they're in the actual reading, sometimes a little tip I might give you is also look at the glossary at the end of the book. It might be helpful for you. Now, where it also gets challenging, though, is when we get to Indian philosophy and Chinese philosophy, because I'm asking you guys to do a lot of reading in 1 week. So I'm going to give you guys a little bit of foreknowledge when we start getting to Indian philosophy, which comes up in a couple of weeks here. You're pretty much asked to read an entire book, which it's not that thick of a book, it's not that challenging of reading, but some people, it throws them for a loop that they have to read that much in one night or 1 week. And if you start it off a little bit earlier, it's not that bad. So I encourage you guys to keep that in mind before you get to the Indian philosophy and Chinese philosophy, to get that reading done ahead of time. All right. There's also a syllabus quiz. Now, this is an easy way to get some points in the class. it's 30 points. And all you have to do is kind of, again, there's no time limit on this quiz. So take as long as you want when you're doing it, again, until you get to the due date. And answer the questions that are there. Find the questions. And it's encouraged to get you guys to open up the syllabus and understand fully what's expected of you throughout this entire semester. So the syllabus quiz is an easy way to get some points. By all means, do so. The next form of test will be our sectional test. There'll be 3 of them throughout this semester. These sectional tests will largely be based on the lectures, the lecture material, and some of it will also be based on the reading. So I encourage you to kind of know both. These will be based off of the information, I call it sectional test because it's not fully cumulative, but it's based off of a group of lectures, like 3 or 4 lectures at a time. So the first half of the first part of the class, first third of the class will have a quiz or a test that will ask you guys to remember all the information that we've covered in that, and then we'll have another test that will be kind of blocked off of the information that was covered since test 1 to test 2, and then the last test obviously will be covering everything since test 2 to the end of test 3 material. And so you have test 1, which will be due on February 17th. Test 2 is going to be due on March 17th. And then test 3 will be due on April 28th. And these will be in 3 different sections. It'll be either matching or true-false. Then you'll have a multiple choice section. And then you'll have a short answer. And each one will be have different point values associated with it. So the short answer will be worth more points, 3 points, as opposed to the multiple choice, which are usually 2 points each. And then the matching and true-false will be 1 point each. Okay? So that is the sectional tests that you'll have throughout the semester. And then let's get into the big papers for this semester. There will be 2 major papers, a midterm and a final essay. And these are approximately 2,000 words each. Now the reason why I put the word count as opposed to page count is because, I'm the king at adjusting margins and fonts and everything and to make it fit whatever page requirement that professors have given me. So instead, I'm giving you a word requirement. That way you can't really fudge how long it is or how, in terms of page numbers. It's all about quantity of words and quality of papers. So I'm providing you with a list of prompts which you can find on your syllabus. I'll actually go through them in a few seconds here. But you must use a different prompt for your midterm and your final. And you'll just choose one prompt to write about for your midterm and then another prompt for your final. Okay? So here are some of the prompts. The first prompt that I have available is, what is eternal life and does it exist? How have various religions interpreted the relationship between life and death from a philosophical perspective? What do you believe? Do your beliefs relate to any of the philosophical themes raised in class? That's one of the options. Another option. What is the nature of free will? And how is free will perceived in various religious traditions? Choose at least 2 different religious traditions and compare and contrast the understandings of free will. Okay? The next prompt is, Nietzsche famously stated that God is dead. What do they mean by this, and do you think it is true? The next prompt is, what is absolute good and evil, and do they exist? If God is omnipotent and morally perfect, why does God allow for evil? Do good and evil both have to exist, or can one eliminate the other for once and for all? The next prompt is morality static or circumstantial? If it is static, how does it remain so? If it is circumstantial, why do you think morality is allowed to change? Which would you prefer and why? And then finally, the last prompt that I have to offer for you guys is, do you believe in a higher power or God? Can the existence of a higher power ever be proven or disproven? Explain your answers. So again, you have to provide one prompt for your midterm and then choose a different prompt for your final. All right. Now, your essay will be graded on the following criteria: your ability to discuss the prompt question. All right. So make sure that you are answering it fully. Structure and organization of the essay. So make sure it's got a clear and good grammar and all that structural things that are important for me reading your essay. Otherwise, if I spend too much time trying to figure out what you're trying to say rather than reading what your essay is all about, it just gets frustrating for me. Your ability to engage critically and analytically with a topic. Also, your evidence in creative and abstract expression of thought. So this is where your creative ability comes through. If you can wow me, you get some mega points on this in this aspect. So thinking of things outside of the box is key in that one. Proper citation. This isn't really much of a research essay, but if you're going to say something, back it up. All right. So, and when you back it up, I'm asking you guys to use Chicago Manual of Style, Chicago style, when you're providing your citations. That this is the one where you have the footnote, like a little number thing, and on the bottom of the page you have a footnote, and then you also have a bibliography at the end. All right. I've also provided a chart for those of you who have never used Chicago style, which I'm sure some of you have never probably heard of Chicago style. It's one of my favorite styles, and it's a popular style that's out there. Maybe not the most popular style, but I like it the most. But I've provided resources for you to learn Chicago style if you've never done it before and utilize it. It's on Blackboard. So the midterm is going to be due on March 10th, and the final is going to be due on May 20th. All right, so those are the dates that you have for those. All right. Extra credit. This is where some of you guys will start peeking your ears up a little bit. Though I love this assignment because I like movies, and I like how people are connecting movies to the themes in class, because you'll find out that I have a lot of movie themes running throughout my lectures. So here's the gist of the assignment. So I would like you to choose one movie and discuss how it relates to some of the major themes related to the philosophies of religion raised in this class. And be sure to support your thoughts with specific examples from both the movie as well as the philosophical themes you find it is related to. So you do this in a paper of about 1,000 words, which is about 4 to 6 pages. And it's worth up to 30 points. Now, I'm giving you the opportunity to do 2 of these assignments, 2 different films. So you can get 60 points maximum. All right. Now, just because you write it doesn't necessarily mean you automatically get the 30 points for the assignment. It has to be quality work, and it has to be good analysis. Now, these assignments are going to be due on May 12th, so towards the end of the semester. I want to try to get this all done before finals and get all the grading done before we get to that point. That way, all I have to do is grade the finals, and then we're done. All right. So let's look at the point breakdown for the semester. Starting off with our discussion board posts, we'll have 30 of those, because remember you have to do two of those posts, or you have to respond to 2 discussions each week. Each one of those discussions for your discussion, each one of those reflections for your discussion is worth 5 points. So that's 30 times 5 is 150 points. You also have your article presentation. That's worth 100 points. You have 3 tests throughout the semester at 30 points each. That equals 90 points. You have your syllabus quiz, which is 30 points. You have 15 chapter quizzes at 10 points each. That's 150 points. You have your midterm and your final paper, which are 150 points each, giving you a grand total of 820 points. Now, this is where the grading system gets a little complicated, and I want to point this out for you guys because I don't want you to get confused about how the grading is going to work, because the way that I've structured it, since you only have to respond to 2 of the article presentations each week, there will be some article presentations that you do not respond to. All right, it's designed that way. But the way that the Blackboard sets up the grading system is that it accumulates all the possible points that, or all the possible assignments that are in there, and then it calculates it from your total points that you've submitted and compares that to the total points that were possible in there, which comes off either way too high or way too low. So I encourage you guys, when you're figuring out what your grade is, know what the total of points for the entire semester is, or wherever we're at in the semester, and then divide that by the number of points where you're at. That gives you your total points. Or actually, it's the other way around. So you figure out how many points you have, divided that by the total number of points you've got, and that gives you the grade. All right. That will hopefully clarify your grade a little bit better than Blackboard can do it. All right. But if you're having difficulty figuring out what your points are, email me. I can figure it out. And it shouldn't take too long for you to figure it out for yourselves. But if it's too complicated for you, I understand. Let me know, and I'll help you out. Okay? All right, let's move on to the next point of discussion here is our disclosure of disabilities. If you have any testing accommodations that you need to let me know about, please do so prior to any of the quizzes that we have to do. Okay? So when we have that first test that we have, that's a timed test. I'm sorry if I didn't mention that before. This test that we have, these sectional tests, they're timed. You only have 30 minutes to complete them. All right. Because I don't want you just to kind of be looking up all the answers throughout. These sectional tests will be timed. You have 30 minutes to do. All right. 15 questions in 30 minutes. Not too hard, but nevertheless, you're going to have to know the information before you start the test. Just letting you know. All right. So if you require testing accommodations or accommodated testing structures or whatever, let me know. You have to give me the paperwork so that I can make sure I give you the allotted time or allotted accommodations for your quiz or test, and we'll make it work. Okay, but I need to know. You need to let me know beforehand. Okay, if you don't tell me, I won't be able to help you out. All right. A couple of academic honesty and decorum points here. Plagiarism is a big no-no. All right. I've got some ways of catching you, either just with my own brain, but also I also have through Turnitin, which is most of your assignments will be turned in through. Your writing assignments will be turned in through Turnitin. If I catch you cheating, you'll get a 0 for that assignment. If you have repeated cheating tendencies, then you'll be kicked out of the class and get no grade for the class. Okay, or you get an F, pretty much. The other thing I want to point out is I really would like you guys, especially in your discussions, to be respectful to your fellow classmates at all times. All right. A lot of work has gone in, a lot of thought and effort has gone into it. These assignments and these posts. So don't be dismissive. And I also want to point out that you should avoid blatant and terrible generalizations about people, about religions, and about certain things that either are completely inaccurate or just a gross generalization that doesn't make any sense. So just avoid that. If you're going to talk about something, be very specific. And avoid being disrespectful in any way. Okay? Enough said about that. Now, for your assignments that are late. For every assignment that's late, you'll receive a 10% deduction of that grade. So if it's 1 day late, 10% off. If it's 2 days late, 20% off. If it's 3 days late, 30% off, and so on and so forth. Hopefully it's not more than 3 days late, because that's really impacting your grade. The other aspect of late assignments is, I just want to let you guys know that it really slows down the process. Because if you turn in a quiz late, then I have to go back in there and grade it manually instead of having the system kind of grade it automatically. So you don't get the grades back as quickly. But that also means it slows down my whole grading process, because then I have to go in there and grade it, and then adjust your grade, and then I have to do that for every person who turns in a late assignment. That really slows down the process. So, as a result, if you turn in a late assignment, it goes to the back of my to-do list. So, my number one priority is grading assignments that are turned in on time, whenever that is. If it's a new assignment that came in, I'm going to be grading that one before I grade any late assignment. Okay? Once I'm all caught up, then I'll get to a late assignment. Okay? So don't be worrying why you haven't received a grade, or why you see a little exclamation point in a yellow dot next to your grade because you turned it in late. I'll get to it, but know that it's going to take some time for me to get to it, because you turned it in well after everyone else. All right, so keep that in mind. All right, a couple other things that I want to point out to you are some student resources available to you guys. Blackboard is going to be your best friend. This is where you can find your syllabus. This is where you'll find your weekly modules, which is how I've structured single thing in this class is in those weekly modules. I also have course resources available to you through there. So Blackboard is going to be your best friend. You also have the Learning Resource Center. Also is right connected to the library. Library is also going to be a good friend of you. Look up articles, look up information, and this will help you for your midterm and your final papers. If you require any tutoring, there's a tutoring service, a writing center. For those of you who are not very gifted at writing, or writing is not a strong suit for you, I really encourage you guys to use the writing center. It's a very useful tool that the campus has available to you. There's also a reading program and veteran services for those of you who are veterans. And one of the probably the most important resources you have is me, your professor. So if you have any questions, please feel free to email me. I've also supplied my phone number on the syllabus. Don't abuse that, please. And also take a very strong note at the time restraints that I have for when it's appropriate for you to contact me. So after 5 p.m., I don't want to receive any phone calls or text messages from students. Okay, that's my family time. I like to devote myself to my family after 5 p.m. So that way, I'm keeping both aspects of my life balanced and happy. All right, so don't call or text after 5. If you email me after 5, realize that I probably won't get to your email till the next day. All right, I like to get back to everyone within 24 hours. Things do sometimes fall through the cracks. So if I didn't get back to you within 24 hours, please email me again. All right. If it's really, really important, feel free to email or feel free to text me or call me. But if it's after 5, don't worry about it. It can wait. All right. That is about it. If you guys have any questions, feel free to email me, text me, or call me. And I'm really looking forward to reading a lot of your assignments and having you participate in this class. And this is a great class, and it all depends on how much you put into it. So I hope you guys do a great job on putting forth a lot of interesting discussion and great effort throughout this entire semester. With that said, good luck.